one thing that really blew my mind when I came across it was that men's preconception health actually affects the development of the placenta more than what even women are doing, which
Wow,
is
that's
just
so
wild to
interesting.
me. Via epigenetics and that signaling, men's sperm and overall semen quality is really affecting that health and development of the placenta.
Ayla Barmmer, welcome. Welcome to the Holistic OBGYN podcast. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure. FullWell Fertility is my go-to. I'm not saying that just because you help support the podcast. It is the only brand that I recommend to any of my clients. I take the men's Virility vitamin myself just to get some extra nutrition in my life. And so we're going to be talking all about your product lineup. You make 4 incredible products, all of which are included in my fertility package. They're going to be included in a variety of other products that I have coming out in the future. So I'm really, really happy to be speaking with the queen herself of FullWell Fertility. So maybe start by telling people, what's your background? How did you get into this? And what sets this product lineup apart from the competitors?
So my background is a registered dietitian. I always say that's more my conventional training is as a registered dietitian. But beyond that, I've spent years training in integrative and functional medicine, herbalism, women's health, fertility specifically. Most of my career has been spent in private practice. And I've maintained a private practice, Boston Functional Nutrition, for a little over 15 years now, and where I specialize in fertility. And so I've seen individuals and couples throughout the years for fertility. And really, what FullWell was born from was a need that I saw in the practice. My intention with it was to design a formula that, one, really met the evidence and the research and what I was seeing was needed for the amounts of nutrients that really should be in a prenatal multivitamin, as well as bioavailable forms. So forms that could be utilized easily by the body, tolerated well. And so, there were some okay formulas on the market, but nothing that really fit the bill. And I was just surprised by a lot of the shortcuts that were taken around forms of nutrients, going for cheaper ones that were not as, well tolerated and bioavailable and things like that. So, there was formula drivers for really creating our hero product, which is our prenatal multivitamin. But I also really wanted to get, as a practitioner who had been using supplements in practice for a while and not getting all of the information that I really wanted, the transparency from the companies I was working with, I really wanted to get behind the curtains of the supplement industry and really understand, okay, how is this produced? I want control over all aspects of this so that I can do the testing that I really want to see happen on anything that I recommend, that I take myself or recommend to my patients, And so that was really important to me too, was to get some control over exactly what was going on. And I've kept, really that ethos with the brand, in that we are very transparent with our testing results. We make all of that available upon request. And I think that's really important for anything that you put in your body. We're living in modern environments that put a lot of additional pressures on our body. There's soil depletion. There's so many reasons why supplements, especially in this stage of life, which really is the preconception through postpartum, reproductive years, why we need more support. So that's how FullWell was born. And I really think of it as a fertility wellness product and education brand.
You mentioned bioavailability, and I know one nutrient that we have to talk about is folate. I just think it's critical because of all the people that are calling me a jamoke on TikToks and the social media and all that. Folate is the one that just seems to razz people the most. So I have all of your vitamins here, all of your products, your I mess it up every single time.
Yeah, the 5-tetrahydrofolate.
Thank you. So we're
methyl tetrahydrofolate. See, I even messed it up.
There you go. Yeah. So we're talking about folate versus folic acid. Both of these are technically there is some degree of biosynthesis, but folate is far closer to the real thing that your body actually will utilize folate versus folic acid. It has to convert folic acid through a variety of other steps, which is why many people, including people who are carriers of any variant of MTHFR, there's another one I mess up a lot, which is a genetic polymorphism, a mutation in which you're not able to metabolize folate appropriately. And therefore, you either need high doses of folic acid, or you need to take a different type of folic acid supplement. And I only recommend folate to everybody. So why is this so controversial, and what can you offer people who are
Oh, yes.
confused?
I have so much to say about this.
What's up, everybody? It's Nathan, the host of your favorite podcast, the only OBGYN podcast that matters, the Holistic OBGYN podcast. These podcasts of this quality are very, very hard to continue to produce without listener support. So here's 3 things that you can do right now. Number 1, if you like these episodes, if you like the show, share it with people you love. They're probably going to like it too. The second is to support our sponsors. I've aligned myself with brands that make the best, highest quality products out there, all pertaining to fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, parenting, you name it. Support them, let them know that you're paying attention. And then third, which is relevant to why I'm speaking to you right now, is that I want you to take a moment and click like just below the episode. Just click like, let the Googleverse and the interwebs know that you're listening, that you're paying attention to the Holistic OBGYN podcast. Believe it or not, this really matters. So it's so important that I'm just going to take a brief pause right now. I'm going to let you go and click that like button. So just don't mind me. I'm just going to wait. All right. You've done it? Perfect. Thank you so much. I think I've said enough. Let's get back to my conversation.
In fact, I know you've had Lily Nichols, a good friend and colleague of mine, on the show before, and her and I did such a deep dive into the literature and put together a 2+ hour webinar for health practitioners through our Women's Health Nutrition Academy. But I think a little bit of the background really helps to understand like where we're at with folate and why there is so much controversy. I mean, in the late 90s, there was a public health initiative to start fortifying the food supply. And folic acid, a synthetic form of folate, was designed, to be a far less expensive option for the food manufacturers to add to the food supply. So it was an affordable option to meet that public health effort. And so that's kind of how folic acid came to be. And the idea was to fortify the food supply, to try to build women's levels before they conceive, because as the neural tube really closes around week 5 of pregnancy. And folate is not the only nutrient, but it is a key nutrient that helps support normal neural tube development.
Right.
And so week 5 of pregnancy could be before, someone even knows they're pregnant. And so we really need good folate status preconception to help prevent, pregnancy complications like that. And so it made sense as public health initiative. And certainly with natural forms of folate like methylfolate, folinic acid being literally 1,000 times more expensive than folic acid, that was cost prohibitive. Is not, really one of the reasons why I think drove coming up with the synthetic alternative folic acid. Now, when they studied it, and one thing we know and you see in the research is that folic acid is actually absorbed really well in the intestines. And so it looks like it's doing its job, right? Because you're going to see it circulating in the bloodstream, if you're measuring folate. And to some extent, because not everybody has got the genetic, there's a varying degree of genetic capability, right, to metabolize folic acid in the general population, based on that SNP and the enzyme production. That some people do well with it, and I think they've seen over the years some benefit of this public health initiative, right, for neural tube defect prevention. However, what has been studied and hasn't been part of the conversation is what happens to all of that folic acid that isn't metabolized,
Right.
that our body can't properly deal with. And that's called unmetabolized folic acid. And I know I'm getting like a little bit high level here, but I think this is so important because if you really want to see the research, if you really want the evidence, you do a PubMed search for unmetabolized folic acid, and there you go. Like that, you can see all of the research around the negative impact that has on the body and the risk and the issues that we see with that. And so I think, regardless of whether or not you've got the a polymorphism in your MTHFR gene, no matter what, folate's going to be the better choice. I mean, it's worth mentioning that over 80% of the folate we find in food is methylfolate.
Right.
And the other 20% is a mix of other forms, none of which are folic acid. Folinic acid, calcium folinate is another one. There's lots of different ones. So why wouldn't we use what our body can readily use, doesn't produce a nasty byproduct, is found naturally in the food supply? The only downside is it is significantly more
Right.
expensive.
It doesn't need to be like, it's a conspiracy. They just want your money. It's just the reality of economics. Like a lot of
Yeah,
people
yeah.
have not actually become accustomed to investing a big portion of their expendable income on their own health. That's not blame or shame. It's just the reality. Like it's hard to afford to live nowadays. So why wouldn't you go with a cheaper option? And the industry is just meeting that demand. Fine. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that we would probably be better off. We'd have a lot less neural tube defects. We'd have a lot greater, let's just say, better folate repletion if we were using different compounds. And this is just the way that science is going. I think it's slowly going to catch up to that. But in order to illustrate this, I know it was a little bit high level, but I'm so glad you did because I want everybody to appreciate just how complicated this is. This isn't right or wrong. There is so many steps along the way. And if you don't believe me, go type in Google folate metabolism biochemistry or something and go to Google Images and look at the diagrams that come up. There is at least 50 cofactors for this whole process. It's not just folate, but folate is a primary driver of a lot of these circle things you're going to see on there. And I'll also add that, what we used to study in chemistry and biochemistry and organic chemistry was something called stoichiometry, where you have a lot of this, and there's a pathway whereby that lot of option A is converted to option B by virtue of there being a lot of option A. And then when option B accumulates, there's enzymes that convert that to option C. So from A to B to C, you have this gradient. Well, what happens if you can't convert A to B? And you see, oh my gosh, there's a deficiency in B. What do? We can supplement with B, but we're still left with all of that A that hasn't been metabolized. So that's what you were just trying to describe. And that's an important thing to remember, is that it's not more is better. It's, are these pathways running smoothly? And where along that pathway could we do some fine tuning to make sure that you're getting the optimal nutrition and optimal performance, which is really, that's really sort of the essence of functional medicine. So I'm really glad that you have that background as well, because you're thoughtful about the whole system here, not just there's a deficiency, give the answer. Because if you were to do that in somebody who's folate deficient, you may not actually get a benefit from folic acid, and you may be one of the 40 to 60% of people that doesn't have one of these continuous looping biochemical pathways that's actually functional. So I do think it was a really nice explanation. Let's talk a little bit about fertility, about nourishing the body, about optimizing your performance, so to speak, at the cellular level in order to make sure that your chances of conceiving naturally, or even maybe having a successful IVF go, are optimal.
Yep. Yes. So in my mind, fertility is such an exciting area to work in, and something that I've always loved because of the profound impact that individuals can have over their own health, but also the health of future generations. So think your family into the future,
Right.
which is so important. And it goes so far beyond just a positive pregnancy test, even though in the immediate, I recognize how important that is, as well. So it's really, when I think about fertility, I think about the whole preconception period, from 3 months, prior to conceiving, to 6, 9, 12 months. As soon as if you think, that a family is on your mind, on your radar, then there's really never too soon to be focusing on nutrition and lifestyle, because everything that you're doing in that preconception period, both women and men, and it's worth really making sure to point that out, as I know you do as well, that fertility, subfertility, infertility is not a women's health issue. It is also a men's health issue. It is collectively both. And so that piece is really important. So both women and men need to prepare, for pregnancy as best they can by nourishing their body. And for me, what that means is not restrictive. It's a lot of just adding. It's a time where we know there's going to be great demand for nutrients, for nourishment. And so it's a time to just really be focusing on getting in lots of antioxidants, micronutrients, and supporting your body in that way. And so this is where I think supplementation does come in. Really, it's very strategic. It's a way to help maximize that nutrient density during such a critical stage of life, to help make conceiving easier, but also to make the health of the pregnancy, better, and ultimately postpartum
Right.
recovery better, and health of the baby over the
Well,
long term.
and you as parents, you're about to like jump into the deep end
Yes.
here. Like, let's get things fine-tuned now before you even conceive, because your adrenals, your liver, your kidneys, your gut, your nervous system, everything is going to take a huge hit. It's just a part of the deal. Like, that's what you sign up for when you have a screaming baby for the first 3 years of their life. So let's start working on this now so that you don't end up falling in a hole and you can't get out, 18 months into this child's life. So I think that's a really, really good jump off point. So you make a men's virility vitamin. Where do I have it here? So men, you're responsible for subfertility 40 to 50% of the time. That's what our best data shows. And I will add that a normal sperm count nowadays is as low as 15 million per ml. It used to be probably 50 to 100 was like the low end of normal. We're talking like you probably used to be 200 to 300 million perhaps per ml. I don't know, because we weren't actually looking at semen analyses back then. But over the past 10, 20, 30 years, the data suggests that sperm count is dramatically dropping. And I think part of it is we're not nourished enough due to all the reasons we've talked about. I think we're carrying our cell phone pockets right next to our gonads. I think that doesn't help. I don't think we're getting enough sleep. I think we're overly worked. I think we're exercising too much. I think there's quite a bit going on in the adrenals. But to start, why don't we just start by taking the cell phone out of the pocket and maybe start working a little bit on diet? So what do you suggest for men who want to start maybe getting some whole food sources before they start, taking the insurance policy from your company?
Yes. So for men, one of the most important things, and this is actually true for both women and men, but I'm going to say maybe in particular for sperm, are antioxidants. So sperm cannot repair their own membrane. So once they're damaged, and a damaged kind of sperm can affect morphology, overall count, viability, right? And whether or not you'll be able to conceive, fertilize the egg, right? But also how normal embryo development and the signaling that's happening. To baby, and it affects the health of the pregnancy in a number of ways that we could get into. So, sperm really are very sensitive to what's called oxidative stress, and it's one of the reasons why I think all the reasons that you mentioned, they're probably are contributing to a decline in male fertility. I absolutely agree with. I think I would just also add that we've got a lot of environmental exposures. That's just the reality. From pollution to plastics and air fresheners, and you name it. It's just our environment has a lot more chemicals in it than it ever did before, and so our body has to process that, and that requires antioxidants, that requires nutrients too, actually. Another great diagram to Google is like liver detoxification. You can just see how many nutrients are required just for that to happen. And so how I think about fertility in general, and get back to your main question here, but how I think about fertility in general is where are resources being prioritized over fertility, because that really is our body doing what it is designed to do, and help us survive first, right? And so we're gonna divert those nutrients and antioxidants to what our priorities are. And so we've got to really, especially for men, we've got to flood the body with the right stuff, really flooding the body with antioxidants. So I love to really focus on fruits, vegetables, produce, right? Good sources of, protein, as a way to give the body some of that right stuff to help protect reproductive health, protect sperm.
Yeah. I have this program, the Patience, Reverence, and Presence Fertility Program, in which a person who buys it gets all 4 of your products. And these are couples that have generally, they want to stave off the path to IVF. But they've already really feel like they've kind of exhausted their resources otherwise. And the OBGYNs are just saying, hey, we just got to do IVF now. Like, let's get you in tomorrow and start harvesting eggs or whatever. And so a part of their package is they get all of these vitamins, but also we want to try to clarify what the body's working with. And if we have to get all the bad stuff out, we have to harmonize all of these energetic bodies. And then we need to really start repleting the body with the nutrition that has been sorely lacking. And so I always tell people I've got 5 multivitamins I get them on. Organ meats, shellfish, particularly the bivalves like mussels and oysters, a fermented cod liver oil, or a really fresh fatty fish, which is hard to find most of the time, bone broth, and then eggs. And when you look at the nutrients of that, especially oysters and mussels, you've got so many micronutrients that are required for healthy sperm development. You mentioned the word morphology. Mm-hmm. When we were going through our fertility journey, before we got pregnant with our first, which I didn't realize that we just needed to like wait a little extra. I thought you like have sex and a baby happens, literally. I mean, I was shocked that we didn't get pregnant after like 6 cycles, but I started taking some supplements and started researching this a little bit. I lost my underwear. I stopped using bike shorts. And I started eating organ meats and oysters. And when you look into really what's contained in some of these whole foods, that was probably the answer to what I needed. But had I had a multivitamin, I wouldn't have gone to the store and bought specific supplements. I would have just taken a men's virility vitamin. So again, this is not the answer to an unhealthy lifestyle, but can you clarify a little bit about what you put into this product so that people don't feel lost and they're going to CVS and just buying every supplement on the shelf?
Yes. So I'm so glad you mentioned shellfish. In shellfish, you find a ton of zinc and selenium. And, zinc is fantastic for helping support sperm health. Selenium acts almost like an antioxidant. It really turns on like a fire hose of antioxidants in the body. And so that's really protective for sperm too. So shellfish are uniquely high in sperm supporting nutrients, and it's fantastic. What I found and I really came at the formulation of the products as a practitioner first. And I know that my clients in practice, even with the very best intentions, and even when we've really fine-tuned their diet, there is just the reality that you're not necessarily getting in shellfish as often as you want to, right?
Yeah.
Or liver as often as you want to. And so we would work those things into diets in a reasonable way that didn't feel like, that also felt palatable and that you liked,
Yeah,
too.
Totally.
And so that's where I found, okay, I think a supplement also will help fill the gaps. And so that's where Vitality and Virility, our men's prenatal, came in. And it does have a lot of those nutrients that you're going to find naturally in things like organ meats and shellfish. So there's a lot of zinc, there's a lot of selenium, there's a lot of antioxidants as a whole. There's B vitamins, potent in B vitamins, vitamin A. So those, a lot of what it is filling in the gap of what you might not be able to get as consistently as you'd like in diet.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
The only other thing I've added to my lifestyle, because we both have young kids, my kids are going through all these little fever periods and they're waking up in the middle of the night and they're regressing and then they're jumping ahead, and it's hard to be a parent. And so my adrenals, I know, are on the fatigue side right now. I've added some. Have you tried Organifi's products?
I have. Yeah, I actually just recently tried them. They're great.
Yeah, they're really good. And so you got like their green juice and their red juice, and then their gold. And like between the turmeric and the functional mushrooms and the spirulina and chlorella and beets and all of this stuff, that's another way for people to do this. Even if you have a really healthy, let's say you're doing your best, but you've got a really, really busy lifestyle. You can do all of these things, but it wouldn't hurt to just provide like a little bit of extra insurance through a vitamin, especially if you want to save yourself a $12,000 to $15,000 IVF bill. Like we can probably get most couples pregnant. I say infertility is a myth, and I say that tongue in cheek because it doesn't really feel good to hear that. But if we use that term, I love what you said. Did you call it subfertility?
Subfertility.
I think that's a great term because it's like, hey, you're not sterile. It's not impossible. But we can probably turn some other stones over, get your nutrition, your sleep, your movement, those types of things dialed in. And I would say probably 50% of the people that think they're completely infertile just needed some fine tuning of the dials. So I do think that that's a nice, easy kind of bypass after you've knocked out some of these basic lifestyle recommendations. But so let's talk a little bit about genetic imprinting. Let's just riff
Yeah.
on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is the crux of fertility, and the way in which it is in a lot of ways the ultimate preventative medicine. What we do, what our lifestyle, our diet, environment looks like preconception, all of that signals via epigenetics to the developing embryo, to the developing baby, what they need, how
Yeah,
they should develop, and this is evolution. This is really our biology, right?
totally.
And how nature works. And so it's what we found. I mean, some of the most stunning examples to me that I've seen in the research now, just to kind of drive this home, are one thing that I really blew my mind when I came across it was that men's preconception health, so what men are doing in the preconception period, actually affects the development of the placenta more than what even women are doing, which
Wow,
is
that's
just
so
wild to
interesting.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so through via epigenetics and that signaling, men's sperm and overall semen quality is really affecting that the health and development of the placenta. And we know, the placenta is an organ that women grow entirely new during pregnancy and nourishes baby. And it's critical, and the health of it is tied to a lot of pregnancy complications like preeclampsia, preterm birth, right? And so this is one of the ways in which men really influence via epigenetics in a lot of ways the health of the pregnancy and health of baby.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of when I was in even in college, I remember driving home from my mom. I used to work like as the clerk, like a clerk. I would sort mail and this and that. I was just in college. I was trying to make some extra money. This was way before med school and everything. And I remember her being on the phone with a family member, um, and that family member saying over the speakerphone, well, Joanne, this runs in the family. And I remember hearing that, and it stuck with me. I even remember the light we were sitting at on the way home. And I remember this epigenetics conversation coming up well before. It was probably in my like biology 101 or biochemistry courses when I was in college, pre-med. And I remember thinking like, what is this whole runs in the family thing? And it occurred to me like from what I was learning, it was like, oh, you have this sort of predetermined sort of fatalistic path based on what your chromosomes tell you. So I didn't really know about the epigenetic stuff, but then when I was in med school, I still kind of believe like, hey, your genes dictate what happens. We just have to optimize it. Well, that conversation around optimizing actually led me down a path of understanding the epigenetics. And what I tell people is, yes, you do have a propensity for developing X, Y, and Z. However, just like if your dad was in his father was really a mean, angry guy that hit his kids, and then he was a mean, angry guy that hit you, you have the opportunity right now to say, yes, I have the proclivity or the tendency to do what was modeled for me. And I can decide right now that I'm going to do things a little bit differently. And that will actually have a ripple effect down the line for multiple generations. The same goes for your genes. Your genes are like a factory floor assembly, the greatest 3D printing factory ever. You just have to tell the workers exactly what they're going to make, given these resources versus the junky materials that they've been building with before. And that will turn some genes on, turn some genes off. We won't get too much into the genetics of stop and lack operons and all this other stuff, back from med school. But the point being that what you provide to those factory floor workers, your genes, is what you're going to get in the end. And yes, you have developed the tendency to produce this product, but if you gave a little different instructions, you could actually get a different outcome. And that's really where the epigenetics conversation comes in. And it bears repeating. People generally know this by now, but you, the individual Nathan, part of me was in my mother's ovaries while my mother was inside my grandma's uterus, meaning we have 3 generations concealed or comprising this single pregnancy. And so what you're eating in pregnancy is impacting the fetus and what's growing inside of the fetus, which is her 6 million oocytes by roughly 20 weeks or so. So this is important stuff. This is really, really important stuff. This isn't just, hey, we want to avoid a neural tube defect. This is generationally optimizing nutrition to the best of your resources is definitely going to pay off down the line.
Yeah, I love the way that you described that. That was beautiful. I do. I imagine in my mind there's all these little switches, and they can be flipped on and off. And I know we talked about folate. That's so important. Choline, it plays such a critical role, as well as B12 in some of the flipping on and off of these
Right.
switches because of its role in methylation very early in a pregnancy. And choline is something that 90 to 95% of women are not even meeting just the bare minimum
Yeah.
of preconception.
Yeah.
So we're really all needing more choline. And so that's one where I make a really strong case for supplementation on top of a strategic diet too.
Is that also the reason that you have to take 8 capsules? Is choline a really, really big molecule?
It is. And I tried, every way that I could to try to keep the capsule serving down. It's the number one biggest complaint, and I knew it would be, of the product. In fact, when I launched this product, everyone was like, there is no way, Ayla, that anybody is going to take 8 capsules a day in this product. But for me, I went at this, okay, like, how do we make sure we've got in this product exactly what you need to be supplementing with?
Right.
And the reality is, some of the things that we need the most in a supplement, in addition to diet, are some of these big bulky nutrients like choline. So choline, magnesium, and calcium, those are some really large nutrients that I think we do need more of, based on the evidence in supplement form. And so they really do drive the capsule size up. But most people find it's not that difficult when they get into a routine. You do 4 with breakfast, 4 with lunch, or even break it up a little further, and you're good.
Yeah, the only people I think that will continue to have problems, but they're going to have problems across the board, are people who have severe nausea and vomiting in pregnancy, especially if they've been diagnosed with something called hyperemesis gravidarum. Almost nothing will go down, and nothing will be
Yeah.
absorbed because
Yeah.
your intestinal tract is just so messed up. If you're vomiting it up, if you have too much or too little stomach acid, there's almost no way to fix that. And so if you're experiencing that and you're listening to this and you're like, baloney, maybe we can next time around reach out to one of us. We can get you on some supplementation beforehand in case you get hyperemesis in the meantime. I will say that if you were taking the right prenatal vitamin, loads of B6, for example, the likelihood of developing hyperemesis is actually quite, it's lower. I'm not going to say it nullifies it altogether, but women that I get on around 50 milligrams of pyridoxine, also known as B6, at least 90 days, 120 days ideally, before they get pregnant, they actually have lesser nausea than they did in their previous pregnancy. It's a sample size of maybe 10 or 20, but it does seem to do the trick. So
We also do include a little bit of betaine HCl, which helps with the digestion and tolerance. And some of the forms of the nutrients, like even the magnesium we use, is magnesium glycinate, not magnesium oxide. So much easier on the stomach, easier to tolerate. So it might be a lot of capsules, but overall easier to tolerate than a lot of other options.
yeah, yeah. Something you just mentioned magnesium, and something it sparked something for me. Have you read Sarah Thompson's book, Functional Maternity?
I have not read that one yet.
Okay, I'll send you a copy. I've got an extra copy. Just we'll connect afterwards. But she had this little vignette about magnesium in fertility, and she had reminded me of something that I hadn't learned since like med school. I had completely forgotten. But magnesium in concert with zinc and some other cofactors is important for when the sperm and the egg actually make contact. There's this electrical explosion, which if you remember from chemistry class, like, you're the crazy professor lights magnesium. It is like a flashbang. It's a primary ingredient, I think,
Yes.
in fireworks and whatnot. So there's actually this little explosion that happens, which is a part of the engulfing of the sperm by the egg, which also, blocks off the entry from any other sperm. And if you don't have sufficient zinc, magnesium, selenium, etc., all of the stuff in not only nature's multivitamins that I mentioned, but in your vitamins, it actually enables that to happen. And I always wonder about the chemical pregnancies or blighted ovums. I wonder if, yes, they met, but it was an incomplete fusion of the two.
Mhm.
And there's an implantation,
Mhm.
but there's no embryo that develops. And I wonder if it's something to do with magnesium, zinc, selenium, etc. I don't think we may ever know, but it is something to remember that all of these nutrients play a role from the moment your egg or sperm are being developed into the release, into their meeting, their forming, implantation, and everything that comes after that. These are really, really critical nutrients.
They are. I mean, fertility is just such a nutrient intensive
It's
process.
hard work.
Pregnancy is as well, but right down to, I mean, as you would imagine it would be, right? It just requires a lot of resources. So it's a time where we just got to focus on getting as much good nourishment in as we possibly can.
Yeah, we've got two more products of yours that we can go as brief as you need to. You make a fish oil, which is your newest product, and you have your Nourish Nerves tonic, which I am running out, so I'm going to need to get more. But both of these are relevant to the nervous system for different reasons. But fish oil in particular, it helps with cell membrane stability and fluidity. It helps with so many different things. Maybe it's not appropriate that I'm introducing these together, but which one do you want to talk about first? Or maybe you can just riff on both of these briefly so that people know what they're going to see on the website.
Yeah, the fish oil, what my goal with the fish oil was, we know essential fatty acids are absolutely critical for overall health in so many ways. Definitely fertility, pregnancy, for normal cognitive development, for overall sperm health. I mean, egg quality, you name it. It's essential fatty acids are exactly what they sound like. They are essential. We need to get them from our diet. Most people are simply not consuming enough. We have a great imbalance in fatty acids in our diet, and so supplementation makes a lot of sense. My goal with introducing a fish oil to a market where there's a lot of fish oil options was to, again, get behind the scenes and do the type of testing that I wanted to see done on fish oil, because there's a huge issue with contaminants in the seafood industry and in fish oil supplements. So we test for heavy metals, as you would expect, of course, and that needs to pass the absolute strictest standards. And then we also test for things like PCBs and dioxins and other contaminants that I just wanted to know were not in this. This is a really safe way to get the essential fatty acids that your body really needs. Now, Nourish Nerves, I'm also an herbalist. That is a huge
What
part
can't
of
you
my
do?
life. And what's that?
I said, what can't you do? It feels like you have like as many pieces of paper on your wall as I do.
Yeah. I think it could be a problem sometimes, honestly. Yeah,
Addicted to learning.
I've got a lot of my little herbal workshop. Actually, I just moved my office home, and I've got that within reach, which is fantastic. But Nourish Nerves, I developed because, as women are told there is nothing that is safe to take, basically, to support your stress and sleep during pregnancy, and that the reality is that's not true. There are herbs that are safe, that are beneficial, that can help nourish your nervous system. That's where the name really comes from, during a time where your nervous system is under the most pressure it's ever been.
Yeah.
And so what I did with Nourish Nerves was just design a very, very gentle, easy to tolerate, nervine product that just nourishes the nerves, and really helps as you take it. I mean, it can acutely help, if you take, a few droppers full. You can even take, honestly, it's so safe, half the bottle or more would not be a problem with that product. But, take a few droppers full in a little bit of water in your tea. That can help you kind of relax, into sleep, or if you wake up, especially if you're breastfeeding. So it's also safe for breastfeeding, at night. It also could be taken throughout the day as just a way to kind of help your body just kind of get into that parasympathetic response. It's not really sedating so much as just, again, nourishing a normal, healthy nervous system response.
Ayla, I appreciate dare I say, the intensity you bring to how you show up in the world and how you want your products to be received and the results and the outcomes and whatnot that people use. You invited me a while back to be on your advisory committee, and I wouldn't have accepted a position like that had you not been so dedicated to quality. Like, quantity is just, we're rife with quantity. I want to align myself with brands that are especially they have a critical lens for exactly what it is that they're giving somebody. And I think that that's really responsible nowadays. So I wanted to honor that and acknowledge that in you, and to thank you as well for supporting the podcast, because I've had a lot of brands reach out that want to be sponsors and for me to be talking, proudly about them, but I've had to turn a lot away. And the reason that I have been so blessed, I feel so blessed to have you sort of on my team, is that the work and the that intensity that you put into these products is really, I think, sorely needed in the healthcare space. And so when you and I started tossing around some ideas, I was like, it's a hell yes for me, because I just love what you've done. I love that you you have this humility about you as well, where you always want to sort of improve it and you want to just make it better and better. So thank you for being a little light, I think, let's say a signal in the midst of a lot of noise. I really, really appreciate you and what you've done here, and just onward. I'm just so happy about our collaboration efforts.
Oh, well, thank you. The feeling is mutual, and I really appreciate that and the support. Very happy to support the Holistic OBGYN podcast. So, through FullWell, that feels great, for us too. And I think what you're doing and really staying true to what you believe in and putting out there into the world, it's not easy. You and I were talking a little before we got on about how challenging that can be, especially in the world of social media, and so it's tough work but needed, and just appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I know you probably have plenty of quality control, some things to do today, so I'll let you go. Thank you for being so gracious with your time. For those of you listening, you can go to FullWellFertility.com and use code BELOVED10 to save 10% on any of their products. If you're thinking about getting pregnant, start taking these vitamins now for all the reasons we described. Even if you just start taking the men's and the women's prenatals, the men's is called Virility and Vitality and Virility, and then the prenatal vitamin for women is the one where you're taking a number of capsules. But this is a great way to ensure that you're going to have the optimal fertility and pregnancy outcomes. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to Ayla. Ayla, what is your handle on Instagram?
So the place where you'll get the most the most info is at FullWell Fertility. I'm Ayla Barmmer _RD, but and I post some stories there. But you'll see us on Instagram, FullWell Fertility, and also TikTok. We're trying over there, FullWell Fertility.
Yes, because you're not a 21 to 24-year-old young girl, it doesn't come natural to you, and it certainly doesn't come natural to me.
Not.
TikTok is a world of pain for me at times. But guys, go check out Ayla's work. Ayla, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.